What is a dead giveaway someone is not to be F with? I worked in an inpatient psych hospital for 5 years. The people I feared the most were average build 20-35-year-old white dudes coming down off of meth-induced psychosis. They were always wiry, they didn't feel pain, they had no regard for your safety and a ton of energy. My worst nightmare to restrain. Skinny little wrists would always get out of the straps. There was no reasoning with them. There's all different kinds of people you shouldn't F with. Most people here are describing people who will kick your ass in a fight, but there's also people who will set your house on fire in the dead of night, or people who will make up the world's shittiest rumors about you and get everybody to believe it. If you can't tell by looking, it's best not to F with anyone. Eater, I had absolutely no idea this would get 8k upvotes lol. All I meant by what I said is that, 1. It's normally best not to F with anyone, and 2. If you're thinking of effing with someone, and you don't know the signs that they shouldn't be F with, walk away lol. 1000-yard disassociated stare. Especially when in a confrontation. That person is not all there, and when they go they will go. I remember that stare. A quiet kid in my grade school had it. No one bullied him. He was quiet and seemed to like being alone. One year there was a new kid who joined our school and he was clearly the bully in his last school. He immediately started picking on that quiet kid and we were all like, "Oh, leave him alone, he's cool. Just likes to be by himself." The new kid kept picking on him till the quiet kid snapped, and holy shit, it was honestly terrifying at one point. He wasn't winning the whole time. I don't even think he had fought before. But I could tell he would have used that metal compass tool from math class as a weapon if one were in hand's reach. Since then that disassociated stare always sticks out to me when I see it occasionally in random adults on the subway, etc. Dude I used to work with, who was absolutely massive, got punched really hard once, on a night out, unprovoked. He simply looked at the dude, smiled a wide genuine grin and said, "Why would you do that, man?" The guy who hit him did not try for a second punch. Edit, used deck the first time, but my colleague didn't in fact hit the deck, so lovely Redditors informed me, that isn't quite right. What I meant is that, it was a super hard punch that would have taken down most folks. When they try to defuse the situation instead of talking I had a buddy in college that would defuse fights by saying that we are all going to the hospital and or jail tonight if they start or we can just go home and continue to party. Always did the trick. I think people took it as a threat, like, "I'll make sure if I go, you go too." There's just a way that some people carry themselves. As a tiny nerd in 8th grade I accidentally became friends with a 7th grader from a very rough background. That was the moment I stopped being bullied, and my buddy genuinely never did a thing. I knew he was involved in some horrific violence, but in the time we spent together, he never put his hands on anyone. Basically the moment he turned to the offending person and assumed that posture and that stare, the argument was over. So I remembered that forever, and now whenever I see people carry themselves like that I assume they are hardcore. One of the best pieces of advice my grandpa ever gave me is, don't pick fights with old men with thick necks, girls who grew up with brothers, or little guys with messed up ears. And if you do, always stop and ask yourself exactly how crazy is this son of a bitch? Doing martial arts and making the mistake of trying to tickle my wife early on in the relationship taught me that all of those things are true. The biggest giveaway for me has always been someone looking around in a situation where they are about to have to fight. A person in their face yelling or posturing at them, and they aren't looking at that person at all, but are instead looking over them or around past them. That is someone who is about to F another person up. If you are ever mad at someone, or shouting at someone, and they start looking past you, behind you, or to the sides, you are about to get F up. Never F with a small bouncer. The big guys got hired because they are big and intimidating. The little guy got hired because he left you up. Spent a large chunk of my teenage years in juvenile correctional facilities and getting into stupid Between age 14-20 I had been in more fist fights than some UFC fighters. Quantity not quality. I have nerve damage in my hands and they get stiffer and clumsier as I get older. Had to pick up painting miniatures to keep fine motor control. I have tattoos to cover the scars at work, IT job. With that I have learned, 1. Loud guys are soft guys. They want to be loved and accepted, but start out of fear they'll be rejected or as a reaction to rejection. 2. Cauliflower ear. They probably know what they're doing. Avoid, unless you're a seasoned fighter, or also know what you're doing. 3. Smart guys. They might not be the fastest or strongest, but they've learned the kinetics of fighting, momentum, balance, and gravity. One kid kept a hand towel near him at all times and used it in a fight and almost killed another kid once. Caught his arm when he swung, wrapped, twisted, and flung him into a toilet and gave him a concussion. 4. Guys that walked slow and never broke eye contact. They weren't afraid of anything and more often than not had a high pain tolerance. Usually pretty quiet. 5. Bulky muscular guys aren't always good fighters. But if they caught you lacking it was lights out. Most importantly though, I learned you don't F with anybody. The wiry funny guy always cracking jokes could be the one take you out of your shoes. And some people can just snap. The guy that gets F with can be the one that pops and that adrenaline rush gave the burst of strength to suplex you into a concrete bench. Be kind to everyone until you're forced to not be so kind. Edit. Didn't expect this kind of reaction lol. Thank you so much everyone for the kind words and awards. My experience was pretty brutal, but it taught me a lot about what it means to truly be a kind person. And to be stoic in adversity. Also that those injuries might heal when you're young but they creep back up in weird ways as you age lol. It's kind of a cliche, but in my experience, guys who freak out screaming, stomping around, and trying to be intimidating, aren't the ones you need to worry about, unless you're in a relationship with them, in which case, leave. The ones you have to watch out for are the quiet, secure, unbothered ones. If you successfully piss them off, run. Run fast. Hands. You look at the hands. If the knuckles are all chewed up on a big set of meat hooks, that dude has punched quite a few things and people. Also never fight stupid people. They don't know when to stop. These mother effers will just keep pounding your face until it's mush. Those quiet people have a lot bottled up. They've been through it all in life. Don't be the one to open it up. Usually quiet, calm when confronted. The phrase, the loudest one in the room is the one who is scared the most, is usually true. When you talk to one about their trauma, and they talk about it like it's a normal, everyday occurrence, probably means they have been F up and have way more willpower. You are the product of millions of years of evolution, and much of it has been honed to subconsciously recognize danger. Trust your instincts. If red lights are flashing in the corner of your vision and a warning klaxon is sounding, even if you can't articulate or understand why you should be frightened of the person or situation confronting you, listen to your instincts. Many people have gone hog wild in this comment section with some strange takes, but the most obvious and probably helpful bit of advice that I learned from years of bouncing hasn't been mentioned once, as far as I can tell. If you're drunk, and the person you're considering effing with is sober, you're probably in big trouble. The tenths of a second, or more, in reaction time you're losing is catastrophic. Never F with a person who is calmly minding their own business while everyone is freaking out, highly tense. That person's seen some Conversely, you shouldn't F with someone who is seemingly nervous in a calm situation. They have also seen some I remember seeing this girl. She was a high-strung mess of a person who just wanted to sit alone for lunch and chill by herself. She literally went to eat outside during the winter because the boys kept messing with her and picking on her. At some point one of the guys tried to grab her arm, and I kid you not, she turned around and automatically beat the shit out of him. Didn't miss a beat, and this dude was allegedly sent to the hospital. Happened years ago in middle school. She was always a nervous wreck, but since then, no one messed with her. Went to college with a guy named Dave. Real quiet dude, didn't contribute much but he just had this air of, don't mess with me about him. Helped that he was over 6 feet and built like the proverbial brick house. He was an older student, trying to get into it and a total beginner, so I'd occasionally help him with his coursework. If I'm honest, I was terrified of the guy, but he was always super polite to me. I was about 17 at the time and 150 pounds soaking wet. One day, couple of other kids randomly decided it'd be fun to push me around. A shadow appeared between us. Don't mess with him. I like him. They scattered. You alright, mate? Thanks Dave. Hope whatever you're up to now you are still being an intimidating gentle giant. When they are dressed like my grandmother, but have massive ears, the better to hear you with, and massive eyes, the better to see you with. FFS never falling for that again. One of our outer circle friends in high school was the runt of the litter. The bigger bullies picked on him, and even though I wasn't huge, I'd defend him as best as I could. A couple years out of high school I was at a bar, and some asshole karate chops me with both hands on my neck, not to hurt me but to get my attention. I whip around and I'm staring into this big mountain man's chest. He's like, "Remember me?" It was the runt who really took growing up seriously. "I've got your back now." Jesus, I was so glad I never picked on him. That was a long time ago and just got to see him again in the fall as we connected over FB and went out for breakfast. Moral: be careful who you pick on as they don't stay small forever. Watch out for the quiet older gentleman who is too old to fight. He'll likely whip out a .45 and finish the confrontation. Actual rednecks cowboys. They are generally pretty damn strong from doing manual labor, and anyone who rides a 3-stroke 4-ton animal that's just had its balls pulled into a knot is not going to go down easy. Nothing. There is no catch-all. This is a person too dangerous for you. Some people look tough but are essentially gentle giants and will prefer to talk you down. Other people look like nothing at all and will slit your throat if you look at them crosswise. Best advice: don't go out of your way to F with people, but don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and stand your ground too. Throne of human skulls. People who sit on thrones of human skulls seem, to me at least, a bit unsavory and are probably best given a wide berth. They will give you one warning. If you don't stop, I will intervene. That is them knowing what comes next and the hassle of dealing with your unconscious ass, the police, etc., and wanting to save themselves some time and energy. There are two kinds of people in fights. If you are fighting someone and they do this, GTFO, cause you're gonna get destroyed. The person who is way too calm during the fight, and the person who is way too enthusiastic and happy about the fight. Especially the second one. I once saw a dude get punched in the face, with blood running down his nose. He had the maddest smile on his face and he absolutely folded the other dude. Sometimes, it's better to swallow your pride than it is to swallow your teeth. When we were younger, my dad was not to be F with 6 feet 165 pounds. He was a 1st Recon Marine in Vietnam in 1969, then took karate for about 6 years and competed in full contact tournaments. He also hung drywall and lived pretty much on meat, potatoes, and Miller Lite. He was always very calm in tense situations, and never assumed someone was going to start throwing punches. He typically avoided any conflict, but once in a while something would get said, and he would just stop in his tracks. It was like he suddenly changed his mind about the situation. Good story. Sunny, Sunday afternoon. Late 70s, early 80s. It wasn't the 4th of July, but there was a house near us shooting off fireworks, illegal back then, late in the afternoon. We grew up in a pretty religious community, and Sundays were supposed to be pretty quiet. After it went on for a while, my dad went over to say something. He made it to the driveway of the other house, and a group of younger guys came out. I heard him say something like, "Hey, this is a day of rest," or something. Then he just turned around and started walking back. I was outside on the porch, as backup, and I remember him walking towards me when one of the guys said, "What's the matter? You're not patriotic or something?" My dad just did that stop in his tracks thing, and I knew shit was going to go down. Like cue the doom music. I was scared shitless of my dad, but there was like 3 or 4 of them. He turned around and started out with, "I fought for this country. When my mom grabbed me, He was moving towards them at an angle where he had minimal exposure and was lining most of them up. He came back about 10 minutes later with a ripped t-shirt pocket and sat on the porch with his back to us, smoking a cigarette. A bit later, the cops pulled into our driveway and he went out to talk to them. It was getting dark and I went to bed. We never really talked about it again. The two first knuckles are big and look like they've hit things their whole life. I think this is a pretty good one that a lot of people don't look for. I used to work at a Jimmy John's that was open late for the post-bar rush. There was one kinda smaller guy, maybe 5'6" or 5'7" and not super muscular, who came in sometimes. When he came in the daytime, he was quiet, sat by himself eating, and left. One time he came in around 2:30 AM. He was definitely on something wild eyes, and just wired as F coke or meth is my guess. He walked up to me, just vibrating with energy and this creepy huge grin on his face, and showed me that his knuckles were just covered in blood. Hard to say if he punched a wall and it was his blood, or some other poor person's blood. He jumped up and down and whooped a few times, then reached into his mouth and pulled out some weird removal dental thing he had going on, threw it across the restaurant, giggled maniacally, went and got his retainer or whatever and put it back in his mouth without cleaning it and left. I'm still a little surprised he didn't just murder someone in the store right there. Insane. My mama was a fluffy, bubbly, beautiful, hilarious crackwit 5' nothing, Yugoslav import to Detroit. Feminine, Orthodox Christian, though a practicing witch. She had perfect olive skin, big brown doe eyes, huge hair, dyed different colors, makeup and long nails. She always wore high heels, up until she could no longer walk. Sequin tube tops, rayon catsuits, plunging necklines, dripping with gold and alexandrites. She sang opera and punk metal 15 years ago. Cancer set in, and she became plump and frail. She was also a sniper, and an equal surgeon with a revolver. Mamala could still hit a quarter tossed in the air, with a cheap .22 pistol. Rest in power mama. You don't want to do this, said in a calm tone, guarantees the instigating party is getting deftly dropped if they take a swing. If someone has a 1% patch or tattoo, doubly so if everyone does what this guy says. I'm a former Marine that went on to become a soft law student and now very soft white collar guy. I like to think that a long time ago I could handle myself. In law school I took my law school girlfriend to see some country and blues in a rowdy bar. It happened to be full of bikers that night. The only table left open had beer bottles and empty food baskets on it. Me and the GF are standing near it but don't want to take any biker's table. An average looking, except for the ink and 1% patch, middle-aged guy walks up and says he's sorry for the mess, but if we'd like we should sit down. I say thanks, and he turns around and points to the table. 3 scary looking bikers immediately come over, clear everything off the table, wipe it down, and set the chairs. He turns to me and says enjoy the band, and we never so much got a glance from the other bikers that night. This was in Texas, and that same motorcycle club was involved in a massive shootout several years later. Well, had an incident that went viral of a younger guy that road raged. Older man went to call the cops, younger guy hit the phone out the older man's hands, and old dude laid him straight out, and the younger guy had a seizure. Cops pressed no charges on the older guy. Keep ya hands to yourself. Last I knew younger guy had swelling on the brain and other stuff. Family got shamed into deleting their GoFundMe account they tried posting, cause everyone saw the video, and said the younger guy was in the wrong, and got what he deserved. They don't fall down after you punch them in the face as hard as you can. Can confirm. My sophomore year in high school I was like 5 feet 9 inches and maybe 135 pounds and I can't remember what caused it but I ended up in a heated confrontation with this brick shithouse, final boss looking, mother effer, named Seth, who was on the football team. As soon as I realized there was probably no avoiding a fight I just threw the wildest haymaker I could and caught him square in the cheek. I didn't know the mechanics behind a solid punch back then plus I wasn't very strong. This dude did not break eye contact the entire time. His head barely effing moved, and he just stared me down like an anime villain, and all I could think was, oh foo, before he hit me with a straight jab 2-piece combo. I just kinda saw 2 flashes of light, then suddenly I was on my back wondering what happened. I tried to scramble to my feet, but I barely got into a sitting position before dude grabbed me by my shirt and cocked his hand back and asked, "You done?" I kinda nodded and said, "Yeah, definitely done." Then he pulled me to my feet and helped me keep my balance until I could stand on my own. After a few minutes he asked if I was okay and I nodded. Then for some reason I said, "I was more worried about you." He laughed his ass off, and we actually became friends afterwards. This was his favorite story to tell at parties. He said he respected me for throwing the first punch, regardless of the futility, and also for being able to make a joke immediately afterwards. Never ever mess with a drunk Samoan. I went to a family gathering with a college friend and their friendly greetings ranked with the worst bar fight I have ever had. The schizophrenic twinkle. I've worked in mental health for over 20 years, a lot of which has encompassed doing crisis assessments and treatment in the ER or inpatient setting. It's hard to explain until you've seen it a few times, but true schizophrenics have this look about them where you don't know if they're gonna hit you, run, or just sit there and answer your questions. If I can get them to talk a little, it usually doesn't take long to figure out if they are perceiving reality like you are. If they are not, you better have an escape route identified. See, the thing is, you can make a list of attributes that say badass or non-badass, but you'll eventually be very surprised. I will say, from personal experience and observation, that short guys are often busting for a fight, especially with a bigger guy, especially if it's not a cop or other gov official where the legal ramifications could become overwhelming. In my days as a bouncer, I had maybe 3 hassles with truly big, strong guys. Little guys? I still get the heebie-jeebies about one New Year's Eve at the Will Turn. Guys in groups, bikers on a cruise, road workers, guys who finished their shift at the dairy, etc. Also, egos and reputations get involved. Things escalate, best to stop and wait for backup. Drunk high women can hurt you, but it's often accidental. Watch out for nails and pointy shoes. Keep your hands up and protect your eyes and balls. Naked in public.